Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm extremely excited to introduce you to this hour-long interview with Sandy Munro and Mark Ellis from Munro Associates. It's chock full of some amazing insights into electric vehicles, and they do introduce themselves, and I think that they're extremely well qualified. I'm going to put a list of every single question that I ask with a timestamp in a comment and pin it to the top. That way, if you want to scan through and skip to the parts that are most interesting, you can do that, and it'll make it easy to do that. And then after the interview is done, I'm just going to wrap up with some of my takeaways as well. I'd love to receive your thoughts on the interview once you get done watching it. So let's jump in. All right, what's going on, everyone? It's Sean from All Things EV, and I'm here in Detroit, Michigan at Munro Associates here with Sandy Munro and Mark Ellis. Thank you so much for taking some time to sit down and talk electric vehicles and what's going on. For those that have been sort of disconnected with what's going on the last, I don't know, you probably got on my radar about 6 months ago. Talk a little bit about Munro Associates. You work with automotive, but you also do some consulting and research for other industries as well.
Yes, we Munro Associates works for pretty much everybody at one time or another. We've worked on everything from, and this is literal, from Barbie to the space station. We've worked on satellites, rocket ships. We do a lot of work in the auto industry, a lot. But
that's your original background.
That is our original background. But we've discovered that, you know, everything's cyclical. You better have something else. So the cycle for automotive, as the press has been talking about for a while, is that it's going to drop because of, an impending recession, which, you know, that's a self-inflicted wound. But anyway, that recession will, you know, slow the autos down. And so we have to have something that's going to be coming up. So we're very good at predicting, and what we're predicting is that as autos go down, defense is going to go up, because nothing was done in the 8 years previous to this administration, and this administration has had a hard time passing a budget and whatnot. So that's what happens. If you get a recession, then the government will start feeding money out to figure out how to protect the country and whatnot. So we're writing quite a few white papers and quotations for that different industry. So we do that. We, like I say, we worked on toys. We worked on medical devices. There's a lot of medical devices outside, and probably right after automotive is appliances. Yeah. So we have a lot of appliance companies in China that we work with.
Technically trained in engineering, both of you, correct?
Yeah.
You both of you have had some experience in traditional automotive organizations. I think you started off with was it Ford or GM?
Well, before that, I was in the machine tool world. I was a tool maker. Then I was chief engineer at a place called Valiant, and then from Valiant, I went to Ford. I worked there for 10 years. Yeah. So I worked as a manufacturing engineer. I worked as a product design engineer for engines, and then later on I moved into finance staff, and that's when we started figuring out how to do costing and where money really should be spent as opposed to where it sometimes does get spent, things like that. But Mark is interesting as well. Yes. Dr. Mark, he's got
nice. Doctor.
But no, I never worked for directly one of the automotive companies.
Okay.
But I was always a supplier, starting out in automation equipment, moving to machine tools, moving back to automation. But going back to automation, I kind of left the automotive industry and stayed with batteries. And so while Sandy was working at Ford, I was busy in China, or basically we were starting the company at that time. When Sandy was starting Munro Associates, I was in China helping put up battery factories and teaching them how to make rechargeable batteries. And so I spent from 1990 until 2005 basically working in China with Chinese battery manufacturers for most of the time. And then I tried to get away from batteries, and of course, as soon as I tried to get away from batteries, electric vehicles pop up, and now I'm doing battery stuff again. So
I'm curious to know from your perspective, either of you two. You've broken down at least a handful that I know of electric vehicles: the Chevy Bolt, the BMW i3, the Tesla Model 3, the Jaguar I-Pace. It sounds like you've got some insight into the Volt as well. What are traditional automakers doing well with electric vehicles?
Traditional?
Mm-hmm.
I'll let Mark handle that one.
Okay. Well, interestingly, traditional automakers in the U.S. anyways are pretty much giving the battery pack, powertrain, all of that engineering to other people, and they're incorporating it in their vehicles.
They're outsourcing.
I do believe that FCA is doing a lot more in-house work than some of them.
Which is surprising because they seem to be one of the furthest ones behind.
Sometimes
Maybe.
when you're in last place. Actually, you know what? Really and truly, all the domestics are way behind.
Way behind.
I'd say that if you wanted to talk about the traditional OEMs that are ahead, you're going to be looking at Europeans, and
Yeah.
that's why FCA is. We've been watching. We know a little bit, and they're scrambling, no question about it. But they're not. They don't have as many MBAs as what you'd find at the other guys.
Yeah.
Shops, and so MBAs will just say, well, let's farm that out. Why should we train it? We can just farm that out.
Right.
At the end of the day, most of them would really rather just have somebody else build the car and they go over and put on that front sticker that says what car it is.
But all the big investment that I've seen coming out, though, has been from Volkswagen,
Mm-hmm.
Right,
BMW,
Volkswagen.
Mercedes, Porsche.
Yeah,
Spending
Porsche.
a lot of
Right.
energy on doing electric vehicles. And the thing I like about what they're doing is they're not forgetting about hybrids and jumping just to pure
Mm-hmm.
EVs. So basically they're looking at the transition from the internal combustion engine to electrified combination of internal combustion and electric, and then going to the pure EV. And I think as cities like Paris and London start saying, okay, at such and such a date, we're going to restrict the use of internal combustion engines in the center city, that's going to drive the market. We don't have anything in the U.S. driving that market like they are in China and Europe right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we think that China's are really that's the one to watch. The Chinese cars, I mean, we're in conversations with lots of Chinese car companies, and they are not fooling around because Chairman Xi, the guy that's in charge of China, he put out a couple of edicts. One, no more ICE engines. I can't remember the date, but I want to say 2025 or something like that.
25.
And
Which
and
is a
by
lot
the
of
way-
cars to transition, a lot of gasoline cars to transition out.
Well, they just won't make any new ones, and then eventually they'll just disappear.
Right.
But the other thing that he's done is he said, oh, and by the way, no more free money. That was really a big deal because these guys were used to getting this grants and whatnot, right? They're subsidized. And he said the subsidizing is going to go. And it's not just to the car manufacturers, it's also the people who are going to be buying the cars, because Chairman Xi wants them to be more capitalistic. He's a very interesting guy. I think he really and truly has a strategy, and because he can do pretty much anything he wants, he doesn't have to have a Congress or a Senate or whatever getting in his way, or the judicial system or anything else. He lays down the law, lays out the plan, and says this is it for 5 years, and boop, there it goes. And I think it is 2025 because there is a 5-year.
Sounds
plan.
right.
Yeah, it's 2025, and it's if you've spent any time in a major Chinese city, you would understand why they're doing this.
Yeah.
You know, I've been going there for a couple of decades, and the amount of air pollution and
it's bad.
the amount of cars. When I first went to China, there were I was in a city of 6 million people, and there were 30 taxi cabs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's probably 300,000 taxi cabs in that city.
Mm-hmm.
So, the entire mode of transportation within Chinese cities has expanded so rapidly that they need to do something.
I agree.
Because you get a headache walking in Beijing.
Oh, you can't even see.
But no, people have
Beijing.
masks.
Yeah,
you have to wear masks too.
In Asia, they wear masks if they've got a cold as well. But when they start bringing over bottles of air,
Yes.
I mean, there is a tremendous market.
Sounds like a business opportunity.
Oh, it is. There's guys in Alberta that are basically pumping
Oh my gosh.
mountain air
That's great.
into little bottles and selling it over there. And then what's her name, Minnie from BAIC. She asked me to bring some of that. I never even heard of it, and you can't buy it here.
Interesting.
Who's going to buy a
Right,
bottle of
yeah.
air? So anyway, she had it shipped to her house, and then she has a daughter,
Uh-huh.
and when she goes to bed at night, she opens that thing up and she puts a bottle of air into her bedroom, basically, fresh air, and that's BAIC is Beijing Automotive. So that kind of stuff is prevalent over there. It's that they're dying. They have to do something.
Yeah. Sandy, what pending electric vehicle are you most excited to
The
get
Y.
your hands on? The Model Y.
Mhm.
So that's going to be one of the first things that you do next year is try and buy a Model Y.
We have located two guys that claim they can get us a very early model. So we'll. Yeah, that's expensive.
We'll
you
see.
pay through the nose when you if you're not a Tesla insider.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get that. We'll start tearing it down. There's many reasons. I want to see what the body looks like, if they've learned any lessons, or maybe hired somebody that knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. The main thing though was the wiring. Both of us here are very interested. How do you go from over a kilometer of wire down to a
100 meters?
100 meters.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a big deal.
So you're very curious to learn more about what they did there.
I'm pretty sure I know what they did. I mean, you get the same technology inside of a fighter jet and things like that. But the automotive industry has been very, very reluctant to move in that direction. It's cheap to buy an off-the-shelf solenoid, and you pull a bunch of wires to it. Okay, it's heavy, and they're expensive, and the guys on the factory floor don't like them, but they are cheap, and that's kind of the direction. This is not going to be cheap, but I don't know.
And I'm curious to see if Tesla recently acquired Maxwell Technologies,
Okay.
and they have a spiffy new battery capacitor coming out, and I'll be interested to see if that's included in this.
I have some doubts about the cost of that for the Model Y. I sort of expect for them to introduce it first to Model S and X first, and then eventually roll it down. I'm guessing, but I think it has monumental impact on range.
Yeah, well, there's a whole bunch of things. Range, speed of charge. There's a lot of things and weight.
Safety.
Safety. There's many things you have to look at with this new stuff.
Recently, at one of the last Tesla shareholder meetings, or it might have been the autonomous day, Elon talked about how he kind of jabbed the traditional OEMs because they hadn't yet come up with a competitive range EV to surpass their 2012 Model S 85 kilowatt hour pack at 265 miles. Why are we not seeing more competitive range with EVs from traditional OEMs?
Because they're buying them from somebody else.
Okay.
I think that's I think you've got, is that the package from that thing?
Yeah.
Well, in there, I think like page 50 or something like that, there's a little doodad that talks about the electric motors, and it talks about how Where is this thing?
Is it just the
That big
cost of the drivetrain?
No, it's an analysis of how good they've done, how well they've done. And quite frankly, when you look at it, here it is.
I'll put this up on the video too, so
Yeah.
they can see it on the screen.
But I mean, here's the guys with the points,
Mhm.
and who are they? Oh, the Jaguar I-Pace, who created basically a kludge, but
Yeah.
they went and got different people to
Yeah.
help them out because they didn't have the internal. But their people stood over and watched them over
Sure.
their shoulder, and they get 367 points. And here's well, they lumped all the Teslas together, which I think was a cheat because
Mhm.
the S and the X would drag the 3 down.
Sure.
But they're at 363.
Mhm.
And then let's look at the Chevy Bolt. 89.
89 points.
That's it. So the next, the one that's right below the Tesla is the BMW i3, and that's 172. So to go from 360 something down to 89, that's very telling. That's a very telling chart. So.
So do you think a key? I'm gonna kick this question over to Mark, since it's sort of battery related. Do you think that in order to be competitive with Tesla's range, you have to build your own, create your own chemistry, produce your own battery cells?
That would be a 10-year project.
Okay.
So, there are going to be leaders in the battery industry, and a lot of the electrochemistries are under patents. They're going to have to be licensed. Whoever comes out on top is probably going to win. But just due to the sheer volume of batteries that are going to be needed in the next 5 years, you basically have 3 or 4 major battery companies that are out there. You've got Panasonic, you've got Samsung, you've got LG, and you've got CATL out of China, and those are the big 4.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is going to be trying to find a niche in there. Probably the outlier is BYD. They make their own batteries and they make their own cars. So they're in a position, if they can get everything put together, to really kind of lead, because I can make the car, I make the batteries, I've got everything in-house, but are we going to do it well? That would be the question.
But at the end of the day, if you're going to see somebody come up with something new, it's going to be a solid state battery,
Okay.
or it's going to be some way of controlling lightning, the
supercapacitors.
Supercapacitors.
Right.
That's where if I was going to put money in advanced research, that's where I'd stick it. I wouldn't.
The next iteration of energy.
Like
Yeah.
Mark just said, why would I ever want to try and figure out how to do new chemistry as opposed to Panasonic or something? It's ridiculous. You can't compete with these guys. They've been doing it forever. So I wouldn't look at that. I'd be looking at what can we do that would be a step change. And I'm positive that Elon Musk is also looking at that. He's got to be. I mean,
He's often been fond of supercapacitors for many, many years, and so that's one of the reasons why I think the Maxwell acquisition is quite interesting, because it's not just the dry battery electrode tech, but the supercaps is something that Maxwell has done since they first started the company in the 80s or 90s.
The dry battery electrode technology is game-changing, I think, if it comes to pass. They can put it in a car. But I've been talking to people about supercapacitors and battery packs for a long time. Because one of the issues with the battery is when I step on the potentiometer,
the throttle,
the accelerator,
throttle,
not the gas pedal.
Yeah, potentiometer.
when I step on that hard, I'm pulling a lot of energy out of those batteries.
Yep.
And then when I brake hard, I'm pulling a lot of energy out of the regen, but the batteries can't take it fast enough. And the batteries get really stressed when you try to pull it out too much. So if I had supercapacitors that I could use as a cushion, so when I need energy quickly, pull it from those supercapacitors and then fill the supercapacitors back up with the battery slowly, and then when I brake, I can capture more of that regen energy into the supercapacitors faster. And I think that just makes logical sense, because now all of a sudden I've got a sponge in front of my main energy source, and I'm not stressing it so much. So,
but we've already seen that. We just did a robot system for warehousing, and they came up with a brilliant idea to have capacitors and battery combination that gives them exactly what Mark was just talking about. I can get a rapid charge because you've got to go up and down and all around, and it moves really quick. It's very, very fast inside there. So what do I do when I have to go to the top row? I mean, they're up about 20 feet. Well, I'm going to charge it. Where do I charge it to? No battery will accept that. I mean, it's running in at 220. It's going to be going straight into that capacitor. Capacitors, like Mark just said, acting like a sponge, sucks it up and then meters it out to the battery.
So this is technically feasible. There's already a pathway to do this right now.
Yeah, done right now.
So I would say there's probably a good chance. If it's technically possible, there's a good chance that Tesla's already got this in one of their vehicles. I mean, the Roadster is the one that everyone talks about being the sort of natural fit, because you have that intense acceleration with the car that they're working on.
Maxwell Technologies used to be a customer of mine when I was making automation equipment. And they have all kinds of nifty capacitors that could be used in various aspects of within the automotive industry, the airplane industry. I mean, pretty neat stuff.
You've got some interesting insight into battery cell chemistry, raw materials, I would gather. There's rumors that Tesla has been tiptoeing around that sometime very, very soon they're going to get into the raw materials business. What's your take on that?
Wow.
Good luck, brother.
Yeah, exactly right. The only way that I think that could happen is if we could open up. We have more rare earth materials in the United States and Canada than anywhere else in the world, and we don't do anything with.
It's protected.
We can't process it.
Yeah.
The processing is dirty, really. But if you're looking at lithium ion kind of stuff, there is potentials in Nevada, in the salt flats, for pulling lithium out of there. The big amounts of lithium are in South America. Maybe he's going to purchase some of that property and start mining, but I'd say why? You know, if I'm gonna spend my money, I'd rather spend it on technology than digging stuff out of the ground.
But the availability of raw materials seems to be a bottleneck for automotive that want to produce electric vehicles. So why wouldn't they integrate that as Tesla typically does?
They could do that, and I mean the Chinese have purchased big square miles of the salt flats in South America for their own use. And
even in the United States, they bought huge tracts of land. And they just, that's it, friends. Nobody's going to be mining that except us if we ever run out.
Right.
So.
I guess it makes sense, and you know, Samsung has already had issues with Volkswagen because saying we can't supply this stuff. So it's going to happen. You know, if there's anything ever happens in the Congo, as far as a war or a revolution.
Another war.
Another one. Yeah. But we're going to have no cobalt. So can we get the cobalt out of the battery? Can we get these strategic minerals out of what we're doing to do something different or better? Is
that's
the big case for the solid state battery.
Yeah.
Because then we can get rid of a lot of these stepping stones that are causing trouble.
You've said on multiple occasions that the Model 3 is overproduced. Why do you say that?
Overproduced? How do you mean?
Unnecessary.
It's overdesigned, not overproduced.
Okay.
It's way overdesigned. I don't know. You reach a certain point where there's no appreciable difference It doesn't make the car any safer. It just makes it heavier. It's something that engineers are always looking at. What do I need to do in order to make sure that the occupants are safe? Okay, so I made this statement before. People didn't quite understand. But a tank is really, really safe.
Sure.
But you know what? It's really bad on gas mileage.
Not efficient.
And it's really, really, really heavy. And it's not very comfortable either. Okay, so you can make a car that'll be really, really safe. And by adding more steel, you're not making it any more safe. You're just making it heavier. It doesn't work. There's no direct correlation between let's weld another steel plate on it to do whatever. There's no correlation between that and safety. You design the car to be safe. So narrow offset, actually, you try and get rid of weight. And in many cases, I want to shear the wheels off. I don't want that mass in a crash. That's, velocity, and that's not something you're really trying to get rid of mass so that you can make the product lighter. The wheels fly off when you see an F1 car race, right? There's reasons for that. They don't want that weight. Weight's not so good for you in a safety environment. So getting rid of weight is a good idea, and you engineer to suit the best trade-off for weight to crashworthiness. I have my crashworthiness. I have to meet that, and I can do that all on a computer. It's all computer-aided engineering.
You've talked about unnecessary glue and welding points.
That's just because they went crazy. They went crazy with technology. Why would I want to put one self-piercing rivet this way and another one that way? What does that do for me? I mean, we put them in airplanes long ago. We had them in the Rover, the Range Rover, and Discovery. That 20, 30 years ago. Okay, these haven't been around for a long time. Everybody knows how you use them, and that's not how you use them. So why am I doing that? Why am I using?
Extra robots that they bought.
Yeah, exactly. They got robots.
Got to do something with them.
In a span this big.
Yeah.
In a span this big, they've got concentric spot welding. They've got standard spot welding. They've got lasers and they've got 3 different kinds of laser welding. They've got what's the other thing? I can't remember it all because just is crazy, and it's only in a 3-foot diameter. And then that should be one piece. That's what we would normally look at, saying, "Oh, we'll just make that out of one piece, one stamping, boom, done, it's in." Well, it's made out of 15 or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, and Elon Musk told me that he fired the guy that was in charge of the body. And I said, not soon enough. And he should have never. Whoever it was, didn't know what he was doing, or the people beneath him didn't know what they were doing, or if they sent it out to a job shop like a design house, they definitely didn't know what they were doing. They should be all executed. If that body would have come out like a standard, ordinary body, okay, the styling's all the same and whatnot, but standard number of parts, instead of having, I think they have 30 or 40% more parts in that car. I think it's 40% more parts in that car, in that body, than anybody else. Nobody, and it's heavier than a 328i body.
Does that?
So go figure. I mean, that's just wrong.
How does that impact gross margin on the car? Because you're using more parts.
You're looking hundreds of dollars of wasted money.
So they could potentially reduce the sale price and potentially increase margins.
They could increase profits.
I think what they need to do is focus on margins. I think there's people going to buy the car. It's time that, for the price that they're selling it for, it's time that they started looking at the shareholders. I mean, those people put their hard-earned money into that. It's not like this is free money, or it's like some kind of cash cow guy walking in, here you go, blow it if you want to, I don't need any more. That doesn't happen, okay? This is like, their investors are basically people whose retirement funds are in there and things like that. So
So there's some opportunity for Tesla to improve the manufacturing of the vehicle. And
Absolutely. If they go in and they get a body house, okay, and there's tons of them. I mean, they could go to EDAG or Altair. There's a whole bunch of body shops that could design that product, redesign that product. Exactly the same outside, exactly the same crash worthiness, exactly the same interior. Everything is exactly the same, only difference, a lot less parts, a lot less struggling on the manufacturing lines.
Yeah.
Easier for everybody. 40% of the parts going away, that makes a big difference. And then some of these parts that they did like, why in the world would I want to make the little, like, that's only about maybe 20% or even less, maybe 15% of the car out of aluminum. What for?
Yeah.
What for?
Right.
There's no earthly reason for doing that. But basically the deck or the trunk is made out of bits and pieces of aluminum with who knows how many different kinds of fastenings.
Glues.
They love glue, right?
Well, glue is the guys that love glue is BMW. Everything glue there. Yeah, that stuff's nasty to try and take apart. We don't
Tougher
do
than
that.
a spot weld.
Yeah.
The e-tron has a 204 mile range. The I-Pace a 234 mile range. Is that enough, in your opinion, Mark, for a luxury SUV that's electric? Is that viable?
It is viable. Is it enough? Probably in most places in the world, it's plenty. In the U.S., it's getting a little tight. You know, we drive too much here.
Mm-hmm.
I drive too much. I drive almost 200 miles every weekend to leave here and go home. And I drive back every week to come back and go to work. So I put on 36,000 miles a year on my vehicle. I would have an electric vehicle, except I drive too far.
But you got a hybrid.
I use hybrids,
Sure.
but I've got battery and gas. I do not have to have range anxiety. I get 500 miles on a fill up.
Mm-hmm.
But with a pure EV, you know, I think for the U.S. to adopt it in a large way, we're probably going to have to get between 350 and 400 mile range.
Which Tesla does with
Which
their...
it does,
Yeah.
and then have a faster way to be
Speed of
able to
charge.
speed of
Yeah.
charge.
Mhm.
Yeah, because people aren't going to sit for 2 hours and drink coffee while their car charges.
The Porsche Taycan has been touting a 350 kilowatt charge rate. It seems like they might be stepping that back a bit to 250. That's what they said they're going to start with, 250. That appears to be significantly, I mean, that's a 15-minute charge for 80%.
That's
Does that get people there in the U.S.?
Well, the thing is you have to also have the infrastructure to support that.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
you know, if you don't have the infrastructure, it doesn't matter. If there's no charge station between here and Chicago,
Yeah.
I'm sunk.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of putting the infrastructure, the vehicles with enough range. Certainly that would make it a lot easier for people to do.
I mean, I do hear a lot of people talk about that, the charging infrastructure, but I mean, I would say 95% of people's driving is from home in their garage, where they would likely charge their car to work or around in the city, which should address most of people's driving, right?
Yeah,
I
and
would
that's
agree
true.
with
In
that.
Europe,
I would agree with that.
In Europe, it's a piece of cake. In China, it's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
But here, like Mark said, people like to drive, and we put probably twice as many miles on a car as what you'd find in a European scenario.
Well, actually, I was reading something the other day where Volkswagen is doing a certain kilowatt battery for the U.S. market, and they're doing 2/3 or a half of that for the European market because they don't need it. They don't
Sure.
have
Right.
the range anxiety issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, when we go out on the floor, you'll see that there's one area that's, where we were, that was all painted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've started painting the floors in the other area because we've noticed how much brighter it is with the paint and whatnot. So and the guys like it better than the concrete. So when we were doing that, this building used to be a machine tool place, and we found all these 220 boxes. So we haven't done anything with them. We've left them on the wall, but I'm going to poke them out because I see in a not too distant future a real need for charging company employees batteries. I see it happening soon. So I've got 3 of them right there. I said, leave them alone. And one's for 40. I don't know if we get a guy with a Porsche.
High-speed charging. High-speed charging.
Well, you have some employees that are driving electric vehicles too here.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Teslas, actually, yeah. And that came after we tore it apart, after we tore the Model 3 apart, after we got done laughing at the body, and then we really started going into it. People stopped laughing and said, okay, so we classify bodies as dinosaur technology. It's ancient. Everybody can do that. Everybody except Tesla. But everybody can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Once you get past that, the suspension, the electronics, everything else is just fabulous.
Yeah, and I think we should mention that, from a technology standpoint, like Sandy said, after the body in white, everything else Tesla did on the vehicle is way above and beyond
light years
what
ahead.
anyone else is doing. I mean, the fact that you have a vehicle that doesn't have a fuse box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you aren't going to find another one of those on the road.
No.
Let's dive into that. But before I do that, I want to get your opinions on Rivian and Ford's investment into Rivian. What do you make of Rivian's product so far, based on what you know, and then will Ford leverage that drivetrain?
I don't know.
Whatever you can share.
Oh, okay. All right. So whatever I can share. All right. So I like the idea that if I have a Rivian, I can spin around. I drive a Jeep, a Rubicon. Okay.
Yeah.
So, by the way, and that is the greenest car on the planet. Recycling standpoint.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nobody makes a product that has more plastics that can be recycled, steels that can be recycled, everything that can be recycled. So
you like the tank mode of the Rivian and its capabilities?
Because anybody that goes off-roading, I really love to hear what's going on. Like when you're crawling, because I do go off-roading, and if you're crawling up rocks and things like that, I'd like to hear things scraping.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know where my wheels are, and sometimes it's touch, but most of the time you're trying to hear things, and an engine gets in the way. So a Rivian will be kind of good, and having it so that it could spin around in a circle, I like that idea a lot. Getting out sometimes is a good idea if you go in. Like I broke both wrists on a quad, that's why I can't open and close my hands really well anymore. But if I would have had the ability to spin that thing around faster. Like I can do donuts in them, but I couldn't get out of the way of this gigantic rock. But when you're off-roading and whatnot, if you happen to go over a hill and you look down, you go, geez. Mm-hmm. Having a Rivian so it could spin around and go right back up the hill again, I like that concept a lot. It's kind of got a unusual style to it.
Exterior design style.
Mm-hmm. But I can get used to that. If it does what it needs to do, I'm more into function than I am to fashion.
Yeah.
So I think that they've got a winner. Ford copying it or taking an advantage, it's difficult. I worked at Ford, and it's very, very, very political. GM is even more political. And when somebody says, oh, I'd like to do this or I'd like to do that, there's a thing in the auto industry called car career decision making. Is it good for the car? Is it good for me? Okay, then it's a go. Is it good for the car but not good for me?
Yeah.
Is it good for me but bad for the car? Oh, I think it's a good idea. So those three decisions have a tendency to get in the way of
innovation,
making things happen. Yeah, innovation, among other things. And anyways, I heard that, like I know for sure because we heard it on the news, that Ford and FCA, Chrysler, have bucketed money away because they're for the impending recession. That means that money will not go into R&D. GM didn't make any statements, but I think that in a lot of cases, when you've got people nervous because of this China thing, because of Russia stuff, because Congress and Senate can't do any damn thing, it just really it really points to the fact that this will be a government orchestrated recession. Slow down, recession, depression, whatever you want to call it. It's government. It's 100% at the feet of the government. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when 2020 rolls around and we're all selling apples on Woodward. But anyways, that aside, I think that Rivian by itself is going to do just fine. How much gets transferred into Ford products? That remains to be seen. It's a hard sell.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, though, I respect the fact that they're putting money into an innovative company like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because innovative companies can't grow and expand and do their thing without somebody helping support them at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a great thing that Ford put the money in.
And I thought it's hilarious that GM was negotiating, negotiate some more, negotiate, and then Ford comes in, boop, deal's done, see ya.
Yes.
I mean, that to me, we were all laughing. I mean, it's I think GM's got the highest concentration of MBAs on the planet. It's amazing, and they all think that somehow negotiating some more or squeezing. In fact, we heard some stories from yesterday when some guys were coming in about how the cost of testing equipment is too expensive, and they need to have it cheaper. Guy said, no problem. It'll test, but it won't tell you anything.
Right.
And we'll get rid of all that nasty technology.
Well, you know, and the sad thing is GM has. I know GM has some of the top battery engineers in the world working for them. And it looks like what their product output tells me, they aren't listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
They have them hired, but they probably aren't using them.
But
back
that's
to the
the
politics
same thing.
thing.
No, it's not politics. That's a profit in his own country. That's why I left Ford. Dr. Deming told me that there's a guy a long time ago, he was the father of quality. He's the guy who turned Japan around from after the war from everything. We used to say made in China equals junk, made in Japan was junk, and he turned them around to the Toyotas and the Hondas and stuff like that, and way more than that. All the machine tool companies. He's directly responsible for that. And in the rest of the world, except for here, there's a thing called the Deming Award for high quality and productivity. Anyways. I knew him when he came to Ford to try and help us out, and I knew him then, and he told me you'll be crucified if you hang around here anymore, because you've got some things to say, and some of them are good, but in the ears of those people who want to maintain the status quo, you're a heretic. You're speaking heresy, and you will be, nailed to a cross or pushed out or something. So that's one of the other reasons I left.
I want to transition the conversation to something that I took from that battery EV day event. By the way, are you going to do that again sometime soon? The EV conference thing. I think a lot of people would be very.
Yeah, there's one in China. That I'm going to be doing in October.
Okay.
We haven't decided yet what all is going on, but yeah.
I think that would be. I think a lot of people, if you do another one here, I think it could easily go more than one day if you wanted to. Because there's a lot of information to cover.
And the thing is, though, I mean, really and truly, we lost $56,000 on that.
Okay.
So
charge more, right?
Americans are cheap. I'll go to China and do it there. I'll have an audience of 500 or 600.
Yeah.
They'll be delighted to pay, $500, $600, and we'll make money on it.
Yeah.
And they'll be happy, and I'll be happy.
Sure.
Americans are not so big on spending money for knowledge. If they get something, if there's if they get a free design for an electric motor or something, I don't know. I don't know what would make them entitled. But since, like I guess it was right around when this depression or recession or whatever started, it was like a light switch.
Sure.
And for engineering, conferences disappeared. There's nobody's going to spend nothing.
So the integration piece, I'm interested in getting your opinions about the vertical integration versus the sort of outsourced segmented approach that automakers take, and then I also want to get your take on the integrated approach of software and hardware, because that's something that I think that Tesla is again light years ahead. But you had some findings where you sort of showed in this thing here from the EV Day, where the integration piece of Tesla and how they integrated everything appeared to be more cohesive than the sort of segmented departmental approach of other automakers. Talk about some of those findings.
Well, I think one of the things you have to look at is Tesla is basically a Silicon Valley
startup
mindset.
Yeah.
Startup, and it's so much different than what you get in Detroit. In Detroit you've got Continental down the street, you got these guys over here, you've got Delphi, you've got people you can go pull from.
Mm-hmm.
California is taking a whole different approach to how they're addressing this. They're saying, well, I don't want to buy 8,000 pieces. Let's design a new chip that does all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy. I think the mindset is so different that it's so much easier for Silicon Valley mindset people to integrate. Make my car an iPhone. I don't care. That's a good idea. And so you get some of those savings. Where the mindset differs is just like what Sandy said about the body in white. We can do that stuff here in Detroit all day long. Out in California, maybe not so good.
Mm-hmm.
But the other stuff, the integration, the being able to have a vehicle without a fuse box, the things of, the battery management system, that's stellar. As far as keeping the batteries
For Tesla
mm-hmm. is just absolutely stellar. So all of those things that are based off of chipsets, pull in all the stuff together.
I mean, the super bottle is a great example of how the normal automotive companies don't work together, and Tesla does. Yeah. So that super bottle crosses many lines that you can't cross here. I mean, if I'm in charge of engine cooling or battery cooling, I don't want I want nothing to do with cooling the cabin and yet we've got the motor cooling, the battery cooling,
and electronics,
and the and all going through one little bottle that's got some clever little ball valves that open and close to make sure that everything's getting heated or everything's being cooled to where it needs to be. That's really, so I'm taking something that I would have a pile like this of bits and pieces, and they've got this super bottle. We all thought that was the best thing in the whole damn car.
Yeah.
Because, and then there's the pride aspect. It's got a little bottle in it. It looks like Superman with little wings and stuff like that. That doesn't happen. You're not allowed to do that shit ever. And there's an adage that came from Japan. The nail that sticks up must be pounded down. And that happens. And I watched it happen where people thought, I'm going to have, have a little of my own glory or whatever. That doesn't happen. But at Tesla, I don't know everything about what goes on. I don't know anything really that goes on. I'm only getting this stuff secondhand, but they don't have the same rigor when it comes to a hierarchy or whatever. I don't know how it works, but they seem to be able to travel between different different departments in order to make things happen.
My guess is just an open floor, and you have departments sort of intermingling and working together to try and solve problems?
I don't think they have departments. I think what they have is a what can we do for the car instead of what can I do for my seat?
For myself.
And career.
And the car career thing isn't probably registered there yet. I know that a lot of people that I've talked to have left because they thought they were going to be promoted and didn't get it,
Sure.
and they got pissed off and left, or they thought they were going to get a big bonus or a big something and got pissed off and left, or they weren't listened to. I mean, in a lot of cases, if you come in with a technology, you know, I'm the best guy in the world at cabin cooling, and they don't use you, or they figure out how to get rid of it, then you're of no value anymore. You kind of your knowledge has gone to zero, and they get out that way too. But I don't think I've heard anybody say anything really bad about their experience. They just said it was vastly different than anything else, and even the guys that were there couldn't describe how the system actually works.
Yeah, and sometimes I think even work patterns are so different with the Silicon Valley mindset than they are with the rest of the industrialized part of the country. That, you know, we do it here. Well, we're going to be here till 11 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
We do it here sometimes, but not at the same extent like with Apple and Microsoft and all those companies out there where guys stay and work 18 hours a day all the time and it becomes their life. That allows for, you know, a totally different feel in the workplace. And, you know, this kind of stuff has been going on for a long time, because I remember when they first started making digital motion controllers that came out of California, and the first couple I got had marijuana leaves on the circuit boards, and we're going, oh my God, these guys are cool.
And scrape that off.
and you know, it's that whole different attitude. You know, when I got my analog motor drives, they didn't have anything on. So they didn't even have circuit boards hardly. But you get these new digital guys, and they've got marijuana leaves and all that, and they're having more fun at work.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's different.
And by the way, that wasn't a metaphor. We will be here till 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
We've got a phone call. It starts at 9, and the Chinese love to gas on until they...
Until we fall
until
asleep.
we fall asleep. We can't talk anymore. You translate that, will you, Jay?
You said something that was really profound when I was here last. You compared Tesla's hardware circuit boards to what you have seen in defense and fighter jets. Can you expound on that?
Well, not without showing examples, I guess. But at the end of the day, if you look at flight controllers and whatnot for super planes, super jets, then military kind of things, you see a level of microelectronics that you don't see even in cell phones. The comparison was in general. There are things that we work on lots of military kind of things. They're hanging. Some of them are hanging on a wall. We worked with I think it was Raytheon on the Excalibur. Okay, you fire that bullet kind of out of it's a 155. You fire it out of the cannon, and it goes so far, about 56 kilometers or whatever, and then it turns into a rocket first. Then at about 56 kilometers, that's its range limit, and then it'll seek out a target, make a right angle turn, go through a window, and hit a pie plate. That requires a lot more computing power than you could believe, and inside is cryogenic units and stuff like that, something to make it so it's freezing cold in there, so that these things don't blow up or what have you. That kind of stuff, and they also have chemical batteries too. But that kind of stuff is not what I would have expected to see inside of a car. But when we started tearing it apart, prior to our president saying we can't work with Huawei anymore, we were working with Huawei and ZTE. and they moved from Apple level cell phones to something I would say would be the next step change. Mm-hmm. Maybe not to the point where you could use it for supercomputing, but it was definitely a step change, and it took 40% of the cost out. I think that if you sit too long, and that's what I think all of the industries in the United States are doing, they're just sitting too long, and not paying attention to what's going on next. You're gonna get into, you're gonna be behind the curve. And Tesla proved that you can take a lot of the circuit boards that we have now and basically squeeze them into one IC, one chip, mm-hmm. and the only way you can make that happen is if you have internal R&D. You can't. Nobody's going to make that for you, not to the degree you want it. And you were talking about vertical integration. As far as I'm concerned, the pendulum has swung way too. Okay, so you've seen the Ford was making its own rubber and glass. That wasn't probably the world's best and smartest move. But now you see the pendulum has swung in the other direction to where, you've got a lot of people in the automotive world or the automotive, the automotive management or whatever, or leadership that says, man, the only thing we really need to do is we'll make a badge and stick it on the end of the car at the end of the line made by somebody else. That's ridiculous. Tesla has probably hit a sweet spot for the most of the car, not for the body, but hit a sweet spot on vertical integration. And as far as I'm concerned, if you want to win, you better have some, because you have to have some kind of profound knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you buy everything, you lose that knowledge.
Yeah. And you lose it quickly, especially if you send it to Japan. Mm-hmm. Or sorry, to China, I should say.
Right.
Yeah. All right, that wraps up the interview. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I really appreciate it. If you found it valuable, please share this thing out. As I've mentioned on previous videos, these types of interviews, especially when I go fly somewhere, this is done on my own time, and in many cases on my own dime, and sharing this out, getting as many views on the videos is a great way to let me know that you appreciate it and really enjoyed the content. In terms of what I took away from this, traditional automakers are really far behind, and it appears like in order to catch up, or at least be competitive with what Tesla is doing, they need to bring more things in-house. In particular, the battery pack and the motor. Those things seem to be really at the core, and probably once they have that moving forward, they may have to start getting into circuit boards and chips, or at least partner together with some companies that are really, really talented in it. It will be interesting to see what happens if Tesla does end up creating their own batteries, their battery cells, as well as raw material, getting into the mining business essentially, which it sounds like they are headed in that direction. It's going to be trouble for traditional OEMs, and I actually am a little bit concerned that if this does happen, Tesla may end up having a monopoly on the electric vehicle market, which is the opposite intended impact that Elon Musk wants, which is for more electric vehicles to be on the market. They can't do it themselves. They need other automakers to jump in and do it. I have this crazy thought in my head that I may make a video on, which is that Tesla could, in order to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles, start selling these batteries. When they begin to manufacture them themselves, they could start selling these batteries to other automakers. So we'll wait and see. I've got a video in my mind. There were some very interesting things that were said on this last quarterly earnings call, that make me believe that potential of them getting into the raw materials business and truly going vertically integrated with their cell production makes sense for them selling their batteries and battery packs to the competition. So would love to hear in the comments what your takeaways were from this hour-long interview with Sandy Munro and Mark Ellis. Thank you for watching, and I'll see everyone on the next video.